I'll call this meeting of the Finance and Labor Relations Subcommittee to order. Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. See none. We'll move on to item 3, delegations not scheduled. Item 4, report of Director of Corporate Services. 4.1, request for funding from the Stratford General Hospital Foundation and St. Mary's Healthcare Foundation. I will turn it over to Carmen for any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As everyone is likely aware, these were items that were referred back for staff reports after the presentations from the St. Mary's Hospital Foundation and the General Hospital from Stratford. And so the report pretty much sums up that there are a few different options, but essentially by supporting these requests at this time or in going into the 2022 budget, we are going to have a significant financial impact that can't be accommodated under our original or initial budget submission. So the options exist to look at some sort of a phase-in approach to the longer term commitment, or potentially wait until the hospice commitment is completed and go from there. So I'm certainly open to questions, comments, discussion, if anybody has any comments.
Councillor Clifford.
Carmen, I was going to ask, how much do we owe on the hospice, and what are our, like, is it 500,000 per year? If you could help me with that.
For sure. The current amount outstanding right now is about 425 in the total amount. Some of that has been committed to the by Festival Hydro as well. So we're looking at our commitment being approximately $282,000 over the next 2 years remaining. So even waiting until the commitment with the hospice is finished, there still would be a budgetary impact at that point, but just not quite as significant as now.
Okay. Did I see Councillor Bunting's hand go up there? No. Okay. If there's no other questions, does anybody have a motion that they'd like to put towards this? Councillor Clifford.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll put a motion on the floor that we, as far as we can, after we get our commitment to the hospice, that we agree to the ask from the Stratford Foundation. The exact timing on it's going to be kind of hard because it's a brand new council, but in general, like I support that. So that's my motion, that we support the request, but obviously we have to get the hospice done first.
Okay. Any questions on that motion? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Now, part 2 on this is the St. Mary's Hospital Foundation community request. And I think they were asking for 50-something thousand.
54,000, yeah.
54,000. Our discussion should be in the direction, I offer that our discussion should be in the direction of, do we want to get into supporting surrounding hospital foundations when we have our own hospital foundation that we feel that we should be supporting? So does anybody have any comment or question? Or Councillor Bunting?
Yeah. I think when they made their presentation, they had indicated that they had contributed to some degree to the Stratford General Hospital Foundation. Maybe I picked it up wrong, or maybe my memory's not as good as it used to be. And having said that, and I think the amount was over a number of years, of not a big amount of money, I don't think. But then again, they're a much smaller municipality. So do you have any clarification on that from the acting director?
No, I don't. I was not able to attend at the St. Mary's presentation, but my understanding is that they, when they approached council for their ask on behalf of the patient care room, they were doing their analysis included a patient analysis on location. So the request that they're asking us for is the contribution that relates to the number of Stratford patients that attend that hospital. So they've just used their figures to prorate their ask amongst the neighboring municipalities.
I saw Councilor Ritzman and Councilor Beatty.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with the acting director's response that Stratford residents do receive service through St. Mary's, and so I am in support of the ask. However, with what was presented earlier through Councillor Clifford's motion, I would think that if we delayed the ask, approve it in principle that we support it, but delay it until we have paid our piece with regards to the hospice, I would make the motion that we do support it, but we will await monies going that way until the hospice contribution or the hospice commitment has been taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beatty?
And I'll just start by saying this is just a comment more than supporting or not the Councilor Ritzma's motion. It's I can understand how St. Mary's has allocated that number of 54,000 simply by using data that they've driven through their intake, who's from Stratford, how many patients does that equate to, and this is their number that they have generated for what they believe would be a fair assessment for Stratford. I guess my comment back is, does our hospital Stratford, do we do the same thing for all the other Perth County? Do we do it for North Perth, the municipality of South? Do we ask each and every one of those municipalities or counties to provide their equal share to the Stratford General Hospital Association?
Through the chair. So in my conversations with the neighboring municipalities in sort of trying to address the matching grant conversation as well, they had not been approached by the Stratford General Hospital for asks related similarly to what we received recently. That's not to say that they're not coming or that they're, that there's not anything else in the works, but the feedback I got from the other treasurers was that they had not received anything at that point.
So just a follow-up, if I may. Again, it's not that I'm opposed to Councilor Ritzma's motion at all, but if we were to suggest if the Stratford Hospital was to do something equal, I would be certain, well, not certain, I would make the hazard to guess that the amount that the town of St. Mary's would have to provide for their share to our fund might be greater than that. But again, I'm just hypothesizing at this moment.
Thank you. Councilor Clifford?
Well, I was brought up in St. Mary's, been in this hospital lots of times, and I love St. Mary's, but I love Stratford more. So if you start this, like a lot of our people go to Victoria and St. Mary's and Kitchener, I just think it's a slippery slope, and St. Mary's has their own foundation, which I support. I think every little community, if they have a hospital, it's important they have their own foundation to get people in the community. But I can understand what Councilor Ritzman's talking about, but I just don't support it. I think we have commitments here, and we get the hospice, and then we have the 5 million, I believe, for the Stratford Hospital here, and we have other requests that come in here. So even though I love St. Mary's, just not that much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is defeated. Did anybody want to make an alternative motion? Councillor Bunting?
Would this be one of those items that we should just direct to council, to full committee? Because I would, and regardless of what decision we made here with the 5 of us, that could easily be changed when it gets to the committee level. Is there a mechanism to do that? I think I've done that in the past.
Councillor Clifford?
Well, it'll end up like our one decision about Stratford will go there, the one decision about St. Mary's. So we'll have an opportunity in all of council, as far as I know, unless things have changed, we'll have a chance to vote on that, I believe.
I see the deputy clerk has his hand up.
So through the chair, my recommendation would be further to the last motion being defeated and to the discussion about it going ahead to committee and council, that a motion be made to either consider or have no further consideration to the request on one side or the other in terms of it being included with the 2022 budget deliberations. And then that way, that motion can go on to committee and be discussed there.
Councillor Bunting? You're on quiet.
Sorry, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
That was to consider.
Does that work for you, Spencer? Does that make sense, Spencer? I will.
Sorry, through the chair, was the question directed to myself or the director?
I'm not sure.
So the motion from Councillor Bunting, just to clarify, was to for the St. Mary's request to be considered during 2022 budget deliberations.
Oh, yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? I'm breaking the tie again. Sorry. What's our next? What would we like to do next? Do we want to? Spencer?
Chris.
Through the chair. So it would be up to the committee, or to the subcommittee, to decide if the appropriate recommendation at this time would be to not support the request, as motions to support the request are being defeated. And again, this would go through to committee and council still for discussion.
Councillor Ritzma?
So then just to pick up on Mr. Bantock's piece there, then that last motion by Councillor Bunting was defeated. So a motion from one of the other councillors with regards to not moving forward with this. Chris, would that be what you're leaning towards or what you're recommending?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. So I'll let Councillor Clifford or Beatty make that motion.
Councillor Clifford?
What's always happened in the past, if we have a motion here, either in favor or defeated, it always goes to to the Committee of Finance anyway. So I don't know why we have to keep going with this. It's like, for instance, the ones we made on the Stratford Hospital, hypothetically, if all of the Committee of Council decided that wasn't something they wanted, they would defeat it. So what we're doing here is just a subcommittee's recommendation, one way or the other. So it will end up, I believe it ends up the whole committee anyways.
And that would be fine with me if we just want to take the information we have now and pass it along to the committee. Does that work for the Clerk's Department?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay. And I see some head nods in general agreement to that. Okay, back to our agenda. Item 4.2, Ontario Regulation 284 9 for the 2021 budget. Carmen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just I'll call it a housekeeping report in the sense that it's complying with the Ontario Reg 28409. One of the differences between how a lot of municipalities budget and how our financial statements are reported is that we do not include some of our like non-cash expenses that relate to our longer term liabilities. So for example, amortization expenses, post-employment benefits, and solid waste landfill closure costs. Those are not items that we typically include in our expended budgets. So as a result of that, it's okay that we do that, and lots of municipalities budget this way, but we do require that council is brought up to speed and aware of the financial impact of that. So essentially, at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, when we complete our financial information and we get our audit completed, adjustments are made for those items on our financial statements. So they do look quite a bit different from what our day-to-day cash budgets look like. So this report just outlines a little bit about that and gives council a bit of information on what those expenses would look like if we did budget them and what kind of an impact that would have. So I'm open to questions and comments, suggestions at this point. So
Thank you. Councillor Ritzma.
We'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bunting.
I had it on my screen there a second ago, but it seems to have disappeared on me for whatever reason. Can you just bear with me? There was an item in there in the report that I just needed, or I would like to have a bit of further clarification, if that's possible. If you can just bear with me for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's on page 3, and it talks about the basis for the amortization is a historical cost, and which tends to be only a fraction of the replacement cost. Now, and I realize that probably for each and every individual item, there could be a variance in the actual fraction as such, but can you give us some indication as to an approximate, an overall approximate for the fraction? Are we looking at 25%, or are we looking at?
Oh, thank you for the question. Actually, I think I understand what you're asking. So amortization is based on what? So let's just picking about one particular asset. Let's say it's a building that we own that we built 40 years ago. So when 40 years ago, we would have established that cost is $10 million, and we would spread that cost, that expense of that building over the 40, 50 years. The difference between that and the replacement cost could be that $10 million building is now would cost us 30 million to build. So it really does vary significantly by asset type. You'll hear a little bit more about replacement cost as a council when we start talking more about asset management and funding our future capital requirements. But it's just one of those things. We currently now budget for our like transfers to reserves, which then fund our capital program. So we're that particular expense that we're talking about in this report does have a bit of an offset in our budget. It doesn't have the full effect of that, of not including amortization in our budgeting process is offset a bit by what we do already for transfers to reserves. So that particular item in this report doesn't have the same financial significance as the others might. But it does have some because we know that there's a difference between replacement cost and historical cost. Did that answer your question?
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Item 5, next subcommittee meeting, November 16th at 3:30 p.m. And items, Councillor Clifford.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I was just going to ask Harman, we have the reports, like the budget reports coming in from all these departments. Are they coming in and just how's it going? Just like I know we had this 2 to 3% we talked, but I'm just curious in general. I don't need specifics, but like how's it coming? I'd like to know.
Okay, good question. They are starting to roll in a little bit. I can't give you a really exact figure. What I can tell you is it's going to be very challenging to meet that 2 to 3%, particularly given the direction that was received with respect to some of those deferred items. But that said, the departments are doing their best. And, you know, I haven't had a chance to review yet. They have until Friday this week to get them submitted. So they're still, I'll say, works in progress. So I haven't spent a lot of time looking at them, to be honest. So that'll be next week's project and the week after that and for the foreseeable future. But
Okay, good. Thank you. Anybody else have anything else? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Beatty, all those in favor? Carried. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.